Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Not a Pro Gardener here. I don't know if you can quite hear it, but the weather outside is about around 40-50 degrees and it's been raining all day. We're going to be bringing in the new year. The first thing we need to do is seed start some onions. Yes, one of my favorite parts is seed starting onions. I love seed starting, and onions are probably my favorite vegetable. We are in zone 6B. We are seed starting our intermediate day onions. For our zone, we grow intermediate day onions for about 8 to 10 weeks before we want to transplant the onions in the ground. Or if they reach the desired size and the winds and weather and all the weather is favorable, we can put them in the ground earlier or later if we desire. It just depends on the situation. You got to make that call. We're in the greenhouse. Big dream of mine to be seed starting in a greenhouse has finally come this year. It's early January, and we should be transplanting our onions hopefully around mid-February sometime. Around there. It just depends on how everything plays out. Now, why do we seed start? We seed start because we can pick and choose more advantageous varieties, like the one that we have. I picked it because it has a very long shelf life in the right conditions. Now, you can pick different varieties that suit your needs and disease resistance and stuff of that nature. Another reason we seed start is to get an early jump start on production. Our growing season is only so many days long, and any chance that I can grow more vegetables, I'm going to take it. Now, another reason we seed start is we're not bound to one variety. So if I go to the big box stores, I'm not bound to whatever onion sets you like to grow, or I'm not bound to any specific type of onion plant they're selling. I can pick and choose exactly what I want or desired variety. I can pick anything that catches my fancy. Now, onions, they require full sun. With our heavy clay soils, we are going to choose to plant them on raised rows to promote better soil drainage. It's going to be a long time before we get enough organic material put into our soils, so you can alleviate that issue if you have poor drainage to plant on raised rows. Yes, we will be putting drip tape down, but we can choose when they need the nutrients or water as time comes along. With onions, if you're planting them in ground or in the raised bed, they do not like weeds. Weeds like onions because they steal the nutrients and anything that onion's trying to get to create that foliage, to grow its foliage. The weeds compete with it, and you do not want that with onions. If the onions have any competition for a long period of time, it will lose all those nutrients and water that it needs to create the foliage or the bulb, depending on what time of day it is. To alleviate these issues, shallow cultivation is needed, or you can pull them out by hand if there are just a few of them in your raised bed or containers. All these kind of issues, if it doesn't bother you that you have weeds around your onions, you just might not grow that big of onions, and if that's okay for you, that's okay for the onion. Onions are shallow rooted, and they grow best with at least 1 inch of rain per week. Now, if you know that your ground doesn't drain well and it looks really soggy or muddy around them, give them a little extra time to boil and dry out. You don't want to overwater them because it could cause some rot, so kind of use your best judgment. Whenever they are in their bulbing phase, irrigation helps out a lot because they really, really need water during the bulbing phase to grow that big bulb, as the foliage indicates different layers on that onion. Whenever it hits the bulbing phase, it needs water to help fill that bulb out, and that will be one of the main things you need to stay on top of, is keeping them happy. Now, you heard me say day length. Onion bulbing is triggered by the day length. The maximum day length during the growing season increases from the south to the north. Short days are in the south. In the lower latitudes, while the intermediate and long day onions are grown higher north, the higher the latitude you get. So you'll have to do your own research for your own place on the map, find out what you like best, and pick the variety that you think is better for you. Okay, so while I am talking about my onion varieties and the things I'll be doing, I'm going to just pop a little video up over here somewhere of me filling the tray, and I'll be doing extra experimental trays to grow in this greenhouse. For the older seeds I have, just to get rid of them, I'm going to be broadcasting them in old food containers, take-home containers, stuff like that. If they're plastic and I do not want to throw them away, I usually use them for stuff like this, for my experiments, and it also is something the kids get to come in here and water them, take care of them, something, little responsibility, so they have a little fun with it as well. Get your kids involved in your hobbies, healthy hobbies, and they will love doing outdoor activities with you. It's also not just about us, but your kids as well. You need to include them into the fun part of things and sometimes the hard part of things. Now, one of the reasons why I'm going to be doing these experimental trays is this greenhouse. Now, right now, our day length is about roughly 9 hours. When you're seed starting, it needs to be roughly about 12 hours of daylight minimum. Now, inside the house, I've seed started everything in there for the past 4 or 5 years. However long I've done this, it's been hard to remember. But I believe it was 4 to 5 years. I have a seed starting setup indoors. I have a seed starting setup indoors. Say that 5 times fast. I have a seed starting setup indoors, so I'm probably going to seed start my most important onions that I'm relying on out here, and I will take them inside where it's 70 to 75 degrees, which has been my optimal germination temperature with no heat and mat and light. So that way I guarantee that I get my onions going. Once they start to break the surface, I think I'm going to bring them out here. That way I do not have to acclimate them later. Unless it's freezing temperatures in the greenhouse or something, I'm not going to bring them out here until they get bigger. But onions are very cold hardy. So once they come up, I'm going to bring them out here. That way I do not have to acclimate them later. Because if they get bigger, you have to do an acclimation process. And maybe we'll do a little small video talking about that one day. Alright, so I kind of have a mixture of old seeds, and I bought one new one for this year. This year I'm just going to try to grow one variety for one 30-foot row. And in some 30-foot rows I'm going to do different things in the same row. I'm not going to grow a bunch of something. I'm going to try to branch out and just do one row of something and try to tailor information to each one of these. So my in-ground garden, I'm going to be growing these, I believe they're Calibra. I'll pop a little image up somewhere of these onions. Calibra, and these have lots of information on the back. I believe in the right temperature and humidity, and when you store your onions, these last 6 months or longer, depending on how well you keep them after you harvest them. So they have a really long shelf life, which is one of the reasons why I picked this variety. And the next ones we have are some candy onions. These are the ones I did last year. I have a few left of all these, and I'm just going to broadcast them in a little pail. Red Floyd onions and Sierra Blanc onions. And we also have some bunching. And we also have some bunching onions. I'm going to be doing these Warrior bunching onions, maybe in a raised bed again. These are nice to have for snacks. And these deep purple onions as well. Now, like I said, I do these about roughly 8 to 10 weeks before I want to transplant them. Now, for the fun part, the onion secrets. As you may have seen by the thumbnail, this is information that I got out of a medicinal herb encyclopedia. It's a really, really awesome book and has tons of information. Fair warning, if I mispronounce any of these, I apologize, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So, here we go. Onions contain a volatile oil with sulfur containing compounds such as allicin and an antibiotic, and all in flavonoids, phenolic acid, and sterols. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a... They have a little history section on these onions that I thought was very interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and pop that in here. It's the history and the folklore of the medicinal uses of these onions. Authorities throughout the ancient world recommend onions for a variety of health problems. Bunches were hung on the doors to ward off the plague in medieval Europe. Wild onions was also used extensively by native North Americans to treat stings and relieve colds. Medicinal actions and the uses. Onions boast a long list of medical actions: diuretic, antibiotic, anti-inflammatory, analgesic, expectorant, anti-rheumatic. It's also beneficial to the circulation. Onions are taken the world over for colds, flu, cough, much like garlic. Onion offsets tendencies to angina, anti-sclerosis, and heart attack. It's also useful in preventing oral infections and tooth decay. The warm juice can be dropped into the ear for earaches, and baked onions used as a poultice to drain pus from sores. Onions have a long-standing reputation as an aphrodisiac and used cosmetically to stimulate hair growth. Yeah, onions can do all that, which is even more further proof of why it's my favorite vegetable. And I love to learn that my food can also help to alleviate problems for me in the future. Knowledge is power. You just got to soak it in. All in all, it has just solidified the ground on why onions is one of my favorite vegetables. And hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it becomes your favorite vegetable too. How can you not grow it? There's just many reasons staring you in the face. This is Not a Pro Gardener here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like, share, subscribe this video if you did, and comment down below and let me know anything you know about onions. I would love to hear it. I'll see you next time out there in the garden. Have a great day.